Gather around the fire, Gazeboids. We have a very special episode for you today. Now, it won't take the full length of a long rest, but we will at least get through a short rest version of a conversation with the great Richard Whitters. Now, who is Richard Whitters, Vince? We're not going to let him talk for himself yet. I want you to introduce him.
A Titan who was a creative director, an artist, and person involved in basically everything that you and I love. So I'll give your bio so you don't have to, at least part of it. You started in with Magic in like 2007. I think Shadowmoor was where you started doing a lot of creative direction. You've done a lot of cards. You did some for Shadowmoor directly as well as other stuff. You did all the concept art for the Praetors, some of my favorite characters, Elish Norn forever, and which that art finally got released with Phyrexia All Be One. You were creative director for D&D for a long time. We talked about beforehand how you redid some of the Demon Lords and stuff like that, which is amazing art. I mean, my gosh. And now you're here and we're going to talk about a brand new game you're working on. We're so honored to have you, man. It's great.
Thanks so much. That makes me sound really cool. I didn't realize this.
Well, if there's anything that a DM can do, a DM can talk up another DM. So that's really what this was all about. But welcome so much for joining us.
Now, what did we miss? Is there anything else you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience with there?
Well, I would make a slight tweak. I never actually did, or I never actually was creative director on either brand, but I was like concept artist, art director, senior art director on D&D. I managed the art team. So I'll just be careful of that because there were some really great creative directors on both, overall creative directors on both those brands. With both brands, mostly what I took care of was like concept art and working with concept art teams and commissioning art and a lot of other stuff like marketing and brand stuff and things like that. Which was super fun. And like you said, I think the big things, like people really like the Praetors. It was weird at the time too. It was my friend Tom Gencott. I'd moved back to Canada, and my friend Tom Gencott hit me up and was like, "Do you have that art for the original Praetors, like concepts that you did?" And I was like, I think I have them backed up. He's like, "Yeah, could I get those?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, what are you gonna do with those? And he's like, "We're gonna print them." I was like, "You're gonna put them on cards?" And he was like,
we're gonna make some of the most chased Magic cards of an entire set right there that people will absolutely be wanting to get their hands on. Yes.
Yeah. And I was not prepared for whiteback stuff. I had people just inundating me, and I was like, maybe. But anyway, it was really fun. I was glad people liked those concepts. I do, as you said, my style is my own style. It's kind of weird, but neat, I think. So, yeah.
Yes. Definitely.
I mean, look, it's a great style. We're going to get into it when we get into Ruttigers, into the game that you're currently playtesting and putting out there. Just for everybody's edification, here we go. I've prepared a little. We've got it over on. It's always nice when the guest has their own Scryfall listing that I can search for. That's always really helpful. So just for those who aren't familiar, here's a nice list of some of Richard's art. As a fun side note, that Elish Norn card, the very last box recently that I pulled of Phyrexia All Will Be One, I pulled this Elish Norn, and I was so happy. It was the last one of all your concept arts I was missing. I had all the other ones. I was missing her. Pulled her out of the last box. So there you go. Absolutely great stuff here. Going all the way back to truly one of my favorite sets, which was Shadowmoor, where you had some art in there. So at any rate, we're grateful to have you here.
Thanks very much.
Yes. So, Richard, I'm interested in your background a little bit. Like, how did you get into, working closely within this very nerdy industry? Obviously, you have a very unique style with your art and almost a fantasy bloodline that runs through whatever you do. Was it a natural transition into working in tabletop RPGs and fantasy card games, or was this a happenstance for you in your career?
When I started on Magic, I was probably in my 30s. So before that, I had done freelance illustration and done a lot of like web development stuff. I worked at like a web development, like online training company. So I did like graphic user interface design, illustration, things like that. And I kind of worked up in that company from like a graphic artist to like a manager of graphic artists to like a manager of a team. We opened a new office. Did all that, but there was a certain point where I just wanted to. I'd grown up playing D&D, right? Like I said, a lot of our stuff we're working on for the game is based on things my old buddies and I did like 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago. So yeah, I kind of wanted, and Magic had an opening for a concept artist. So I told my boss at the time, I was like, I think I want to do this. And he was like, well, he's like, you're a really good manager, but it's like, if that's something you want to do, you can do that. He was even like, if you want to take interview calls in your office at work, like go ahead. And I was like, that's awesome. So he was very good.
Cool boss.
Yeah, very good at him. So yeah, I did that. And that was to work for Magic. There was a pencil test. So basically there were many people competing for the position, and everybody got an email at a certain time. And then you had 24 hours to read what was in the email and draw as many concept pieces as you could. So needless to say, that was like a long night.
Sure.
Yep. But what I had done is I had 3 friends of mine who were very much into Magic, and they had told me that they'll do this pencil test, but you had no idea what would be in it. So I had 3 separate friends dream up what they thought a pencil test would be. So I did 3 pencil tests that my friends made up before I ever did one for Magic, because I was like, I want to see if I can do this. Yeah, it's like it's like, do you want to get in the ring with Rocky Balboa? It's like, maybe I'll practice.
I was just gonna say it's a Rocky montage. Yes, I was literally thinking that exact same thing.
Yeah, yeah. My buddies were just like, let's try to trip him up, and I was like, please, like, go for it. But anyway, yeah, I did the pencil test. They really liked my pencil test. Flew me to Seattle, and I talked to all the folks there, like Aaron and Bill and those guys, and had good interviews. And then they hired me on Magic, and then I did 7 years on Magic as lead concept artist and ran the concept pushes and did some art direction, and then kind of moved over to D&D and took that kind of world building type of stuff over to D&D for 5th edition.
I was gonna say, like you joined there right at the basic launch of 5th edition, so that had to be pretty exciting to be like directing a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, like they'd been working on it for a while before that, and when I got on, you'll see through the original 5e core books, like my sketches here and there of all these different things. Like I did all the conditions, stuff that's on the DM screen, things like that. So my doodles are all through there, and we were putting all that together. So, it would be like Chris Perkins, like, could you draw some of this stuff? And I'd be like, sure. Like, yeah, give me a day. Like, okay. Well, so it was very fun. It was very exciting. Of that too, and also moving from Magic, because when I first started on Magic, it was sort of beginning to flare up, and I think it really got back, really started flying when we were on it. So, but D&D had kind of faltered a bit with 4th, so I was sort of like, this is really fun, because when you get something creatively that's like, we want to reinvigorate this. It's like, yeah, bring me onto that. That's awesome.
Yes. I know exactly the little condition sketches you're talking about. They're some of my favorite art. Yeah, from the book, exactly. Like and so for I'll show some of your art later as we look at some of the stuff. And people, it would immediately, to anybody who's played 5th edition, it would immediately click. They would be like, yep, okay, know exactly what that is, 100%. Because they're just like some of the most, they stand out. So it's great.
Yeah. I can close my eyes. I can picture the poison condition right now. I can just see the little guy. and that's a great
guy
thing.
Getting eaten by the frog. People like that one.
Yeah, yes. So even if you don't know Richard's art, you probably know Richard's art. You've probably looked at it so many times if you've played any D&D 5th edition, and that's just so amazing that it's some of the most iconic stuff in that book. And I mean, it stared at the ass end of that DM screen for enough hours that I can see it in my sleep. uh, but all this time, if you've been working in the creative art side, you have, is this your first project that is creating a game, or that's had your hand in the actual gaming side? Is this your first foray?
Yeah, like as far as an actual like making the product.
Yeah, like making the rules. Yeah, deciding to go
Yeah.
from, I mean, like the art side and the rules side. Sometimes it's a bit of a sharks and a jets situation, right?
Yeah.
So, what made you cross over teams there?
Well, actually, even before I worked at Wizards, I liked like I was sort of a home brewer of D&D stuff. Like I said, I've been a DM forever. Like, um, so even when I was at Wizards, typically it was pretty regular for me, about once a week at least, um, to have people over. And we had a thing where it's like you either you're, either you had a game, either you made a game and you want people to come play it, or we'll make a game when you show up, or we'll play a game that somebody found that we think would be cool. So I really commonly used my friends as guinea pigs. And a lot of them were game designers at Wizards as well. So we had a lot of, I'd be like, oh, come on over, I'm going to try this new thing. And they'd be like, okay, cool. And then we'd try it out. And so there was a lot of like talking on the balcony about, did that work? No, that sucked. Right. Like toss that out. Um, and then like, but this was pretty cool. And that was pretty cool. So it was sort of years of that, playing around, toying with things. And then, uh, right when I wanted to get, after COVID, I wanted to kind of get back to Canada, close to the family and stuff. Um, so I left Wizards, but I was hired by Sven from Larian, who made Baldur's Gate 3. So I worked with Sven for a while, and it was sort of there, and I was there and making stuff with him and making games and stuff, and I was like, I really want to make this my own thing with my friends. Um, and Sven, of course, was like, absolutely, like that makes total sense. I was like, okay, so he got me free. It's like I just want to go here and do this. He was like, okay, I totally get that. So, um, but we had been working on it for that time, especially me and my friend Matthew. Um, so we had always been like messing with things and looking at the world, because the sort of setting and the way we wanted the game to play was something we had thought about for years. So it was always there, kind of thing. Yeah, I didn't just go, let's try math instead of art.
You're right, sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that's exactly, yeah. It's like,
yeah.
So
It was
it's safe
it
to
was
say
kind of
that
through
you've been
line. Yeah.
yeah. So you've been beta testing one version or another this game for 30 plus years, to just find out within your own games what has worked and what hasn't, and what's drawn you, and to pull back on maybe some things you hadn't thought about for 20 years, about games you'd played or campaigns you run or home rules that you've messed around with, to revisit them, to put them down to ink and paper. That's really really cool. Also, I love the casual Larion name drop as well. Like, if it wasn't enough heavy hitters that you've worked with, Richard, it's like, oh, just the largest and most impactful video game in the last decade. No big deal.
Well, that was kind of a weird one. When I came on there, I was helping with like another secret project they were working on. So I am kind of careful with it, because I worked with that team. Sven's team is absolutely spectacular. Like they're just so good. They're just completely excellent at what they do, and they're really good people. Um, but no, that was actually a thing, because it was sort of like, what did you help on Baldur's Gate 3? And it's when you kind of come in like the fifth year of
Sure.
like,
Sure.
of a thing. It's kind of like, yeah, and it's like, yeah, I helped out a bit, but come on, like I didn't build the pyramids. I just helped put a couple coats of paint on it, like, but the like I said, that team is just spectacular, and I worked with them for like a year or so, and it was just, yeah, when you get a team like that, you're gonna do awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
as
nice.
much as it pains me not to push you more on the secret Larion project, we'll sidestep that one. Vince, I'm gonna turn it over to you. I feel like I've been asking and
No, it's all
poking
good.
Richard.
I want to use this as an opportunity. Let's transition into Ruttigers, into the Ruttigers Almanac. So I'm just gonna do a little sherry here so people can see some stuff. I don't know if everybody can hear my dog in the background. That's just nice flavor there for everyone if they can. I'm coming to you on a week here with absolutely no sleep. Just so we know, because not only did we launch like myself, I launched my new game this day as we're recording, but also I've got a new puppy this week, and she's upstairs driving my wife insane right now. So that's been my week. But the highlight of my week was reading through this. So this is Rudders. You can see this wonderful cover art that you did here, and you've got it out as a playtest packet right now, which I love. Thieves' tools to unlock danger and fun in your game. And what I love about this is you very much have. I'm not gonna give away the game here for free to everybody, but I'm just gonna show a little bit of the art and kind of the thing,
Yeah.
kind of
No,
the
feel
overview
free
stuff here.
to show whatever. A lot of people the playtest is pretty open, so there's a lot of people
Right
that have
on.
seen it. Yeah.
But just like so I read through the whole document as well as your notes. I think this is such a nice thing here. Let's just look at the page here. Let me get over here so we can all see. There we go. So we can all see the character sheet. Okay. I got so many questions I want to ask. I don't even I can barely contain myself. All right. First of all, this is one of the best character sheet designs I've ever seen. I'm just going to start there, folks, because John, did you notice that all the rules basically for the game that you need to know are just listed right over here on the side, just right there?
Yep.
Okay. Easy memory. So this is such an inside baseball question, but it's my first one. How much layout work have you done and stuff like that? Like that you made this great character sheet as the first shot across the bow in the playtest. This is a really good character sheet.
Oh, I just whipped it up. No, this went
just
through
instinct.
No,
Okay.
this
the
went
Mozart
through,
of character sheets over here.
I'm really picky, so yeah, this went through like a ton of iterations, and even the rules of how what we're putting in there and how do you abbreviate them and all that. Yeah, I definitely didn't just whip it up. It took a while. There was a lot of things that we kind of had to work out, and actually, I found that one of the good things was almost like some of the game design I limited down by what could be. You obviously have a thing where it's like, this is a really cool rule, but it's going to take me 3 pages to explain it.
Yep.
and then you're like, that means it's not a really cool rule. So this was sort of a thing of like, okay, can we easily get these in here, and do we have enough interesting things in here to sort of catch people and make it clear? But I always had at Wizards, I always had people hunt me down to run games for them. They'd be like, oh, my friends are in town and they want you to run like an official D&D game for them. So I was constantly making what I called like guided character sheets, because a lot of times I either had artists who were visiting from other countries whose first language wasn't English, or I had a lot of people who were like, I've never played before, but I hear this is super fun. So,
Gotcha.
So this kind of guided character sheet is something I made a lot of. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hold on. I have one more minor question before we go back to John. Literally, I could just talk the rest of the podcast. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Like as someone who has been, so I've mentioned this on the pod before. Our audience will know. So I was involved with 5th edition's creation as one of the consultants. So I knew Mike Merles and stuff like that. We could go back quite a few years. And so he brought me in to do the consulting. So like I was involved with that from the beginning, and I've published my own games for years and stuff like that, RPGs and stuff. But like, so I am deep in the guts of like every decision you made. I want to know why. I'm just so fascinated by everything. For example, here's a little one. The order on the sheet, strength, and it's how you list it throughout the game as well. Strength, con, dex, whiz, int, charisma, as
Yes.
opposed to either the current listing, strength, dex, con, int, whiz, charisma, or the AD&D listing, which flipped around the mental stats, like strength, and then the mental stats, and then dex, con. So like, what was the instinct to do this progression? I know it's such a minor thing, but like again, it's that little stuff.
It's strange. There's a reason for it, and I would call it at this point like an artifact. I had people ask me about that because they were like, "Can you you should have those in a different order or whatever?" And I was like, "Well, I'll make a PDF character sheet where you can just pick. I put them in whatever order you want." But this original order is based on a little thing I was trying to do, which was to, I guess, boil down the monster stats to 3 instead of 6. So and I was using sort of the old 3rd edition. So strength and con would be fort, like fortitude.
Right.
So they would have one stat that's fort, that's their +3 in that strength and con or whatever. Dex and wisdom was your reflex. So it's like agility and perception, and then intelligence and charisma was your will. So I sort of had it where the monsters would have these abbreviated 3 stats. So I was using these to kind of reflect them. And at one point I actually had sort of sub saves and things like that built around that.
Yeah.
But again, when you play test things, it's sort of like, wow, this is an interesting rabbit hole that isn't as fun as we thought it would be. So I ended with that, but I honestly, I've had a lot of people request to put it in the old like strength, intelligence. I think it was strength, intelligence, wisdom. Then it was
dex, charisma, or I think that was or maybe it was dex, con, charisma. That might be
it might have been dex, con, charisma, because I think it was fighter, magic user, cleric, thief, con, charisma. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
Roughly, because people used to roll them in order and then kind of look and be like, what class can I play?
We've had a lot of conversations about rolling and down the line and all of that on this podcast. You bet.
Yeah, we saw in the Ruttigers rules about your rules for rolling character stats, and Vince would like a word with you outside later. But
it's got a high bottom.
I would argue, you're right. I would argue that there's very kind of a spoiler to what I want to get into later in this conversation, Richard, which is about every decision feeling very purposeful and very well thought out and tried and tested, or at least where you're at this point in the rules for why a decision was made. But before we get into all that, I think we jumped right into the deep end of the pool, and I think we need to get out and we need to go back down to the kiddie pool area and bring in the audience at a higher level to introduce them.
That's a good idea. Yes, Vince is getting too detailed. Sorry, everybody. I'm sorry.
I do that
I'm
too.
So excited,
so
but yes.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
You're right, John. High level. Yes, I think what you're going to say is tell us about the game, right? Like, why this game? Why this instinct?
Right,
what do you want to
Give
achieve
us
with it? What's
the elevator pitch? What is this game? What can you say about it that makes it unique? That is, the decisions why you made the game that you made, and kind of just led up to this being the form in the playtest version that it is today.
Well, it started with me telling, like I said, a few of my old buddies that I used to play with, and me, Matthew, Patrick, and Clark. It was like, we want to make this, or do you guys want to make this with me? They were like, yeah. And I was like, I would love to have that feeling again. that we all had when we were like 12, 13, when you first got a book and you were like, this is full of mysteries and
Right.
Yes.
like all
The
kinds of fun.
discovery.
Yeah, yeah. And it had this like, it's a fantasy world and it's scary and so that was sort of the root of it. Literature wise, I always thought Fafford and the Grey Mouser by Fritz Lieber
Hmm.
was
Yes.
felt the most D&D to me. Like they were just two crazy people running around, causing chaos and getting the Thieves Guild angry at them and then running away and doing all these things. So I was like, that is the most D&D kind of narrative stuff. But you also had like Conan, um, and we all loved H.P. Lovecraft stuff and that creepy stuff and all kinds of other like pulp stuff. So we're like, we really like that pulp feel, and that's how we felt it was when we were playing when we were younger. So we're like, we want that feeling. Um, and then the content of the final book, because this is just play test of sort of the core system and stuff. But what we wanted for the feel of the final book was my two favorite D&D books have always been the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide um, and the Rule Cyclopedia. Right? So I was like, if we might be mad, I might be mad, but if you guys are with me, let's make a book that's like a combo of these two. Like it's got a setting, it's got all the rules to make a character, it's got all these fun mini game side things in it, and other tools like a monster builder. Like let's do that. So that's sort of our initial inspiration, which was like, let's try to be 12 again. Then
Right.
literature was like all the pulp stuff, especially Fafford and the Grey Mouser. And then sort of book wise, it was Real Cyclopedia and the old DMG. So that was like the,
I mean, those are two all timers right there. Like I would absolutely list that. If anybody asked me for top 5 printed D&D books of all time, those two would have been there. We've literally discussed a couple of them on the show before, because they're just like I still regularly reference the original first edition DMG. Like it was so good in what and how it made it. It gave you the tools to act as a GM. It's incredible. So yeah, great,
Now,
great,
you
great,
will
great
never
inspiration.
find something twice in there. You,
Right, right.
yep, it's like a
Yeah,
labyrinth,
good and
but
bad.
it's, yeah, yeah, but you find something new every time. It's my favorite. It's probably my favorite gaming book ever. I just flip it open and get lost somewhere.
I I really appreciated your description and the kind of the story behind the making of this game, Richard. And when I was reading through the playtest, I kept thinking the same two words in my head over and over, and they kept popping into my head as I was digging deeper and deeper into your rules and how it felt the design was happening. And those words were gritty and grounded. And it was the way that it's just like if someone said, what is this game in two words, I would say it's gritty and it's grounded. And what I mean by that is, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong in this, in my novice interpretation of this, when I say gritty, it's what you just talked about. It feels like the rich smell of earth, right? That you feel that your feet are on the ground and that danger or horrors are around any corner. You do not feel like you are an invincible predetermined hero in this world. You feel that life is on a razor's edge, and it feels alive. It feels memorable and feels very low fantasy in the best kind of a way. And it felt like every way that you describe rules or why you chose to make the rules that you made were to feel real gritty and to feel grounded. And when I say grounded, what I mean is, for someone that hasn't read this rules book before for the playtest, and you hear about your motivations and your history in D&D, you may think, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be very lengthy, very wordy, very complicated, very over the top, just like first and second edition D&D and how the game is actually played." And when I say grounded, I mean it feels like you're taking the inspiration, but you're modernizing this so you get the feel in the world in the gameplay that you want, but in a way that feels like you're releasing all the bonds of the weight of those old musty editions from 30, 40 years ago. Now, tell me I'm wrong, or tell me I'm right. I'd like to hear that more.
Let me add just one thing before Richard responds, which is I just add one more descriptor to what you said, which is there's a little bit of cheekiness to it. Right, like it's got a bit of a wink to it of like the whole Ruttigers thing, and like the little characters who keep popping up and talking to you. Like there's a little bit of a wink and a nod. Like, yes, this is serious, it's dangerous, but also we're out here having fun. I appreciated that. It doesn't take itself overtly serious. So okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that's how I always DM'd. Because my players would be like, "We're gonna do this," and I'd kind of be like, "Oh, how good of an idea do you think that is?" Like, that sounds wise. No. So, and then they'd be, "Wait, what? Should we wait? Are you saying we should? Oh no, go do what you're gonna do." So that to me was a huge part of the fun of the game, because we always had like, oh god, that was tense, but it was also, it's just us. It's like trying to jump scare each other or something similar. But yeah, the mechanics. Like somebody asked me a question the other day about, they were talking about mechanics and things like that, and they were kind of like, well, Gary Gygax thought this at this time, or Dave Arneson thought this at this time, and I'd thought about that before and how they were doing mechanics, and I was sort of like, outside of any particular thing they might talk about, of like, here's what I think this should be, or here you should never do this, or whatever. What I tended to read was they seemed to constantly, they or the other players at their table would come up with some new thing, like a new mechanic or a spell or something like that. And then they would try it with a small group. And then they also had these broader play groups that could apparently get up to like 50 or 60 people, but they were probably split into separate groups, but they had a very large pool of people. So then they would take that idea and try it with a bigger pool of people and see if it worked, and basically see if it broke. So what interested me about I think, like I said, this is all kind of theory. There's probably some people I could ask, but the theory in my head was they actually were just playing and making the game all at once, right? They were totally into it and playing it and making it all at once. And then as you keep going, I think it kind of turns more into, this is game design, and then we'll test it with other people, right? So me and my friends are just old players and goofballs. So the root of our testing was that. And we also wanted, if something gets too complicated or fiddly, we're usually like, is there a way that we can do that without it so much tracking, or so much, that I have to page flip as much? So we kind of just kept running it through that mill of like, we still want this mechanic, we still want something to do this, but is there a better way that we can do it? So like you said, I do think we spent a lot of time. If we really, there was a point, I think with the D&D like OGL stuff, and a lot of people were we're going to make a game and all this kind of thing. And I remember talking to my friends, and I was like, we want to take a bunch of time and grind this through the mill and make it really good, because we want to put out something that we think will be really cool, and not just something we can put out in a month. So we actually spent a good chunk of time, and I mean, bless my friends for putting up with me, because I would get whole sections of the rules and just be like, I'm chucking this, I'm going to try to rebuild it. And they'd be, oh man, really? Like, yep. So, yeah, so it is, yeah, I would say it's grinding. We were trying to like make a katana, I guess. Fold the metal, fold the metal, fold the metal. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I read this, so I mean, sharp-eyed viewers will see that the PDF up on my screen, which is the playtest document, there's a couple of extra documents you put out, like, sort of clarifications or, erratas or additional rules and stuff like that. But this playtest document is 19 pages. Okay. And like, to be clear, this is not just the whole game, including like your player information and your monster information, but also a bunch of other fun subsystems we'll talk about later, like little mini games, effectively, things you can do. So the economy of just like how much you're packing in here is exceptional. It's like the Mark Twain quote of I'm sorry this letter's so long, I didn't have time to make it short. You took the time to make it short, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what I noticed. Like everything is as absolutely cut down to like the most efficient communication you can have. That's what I
Yeah.
noted as I was reading through it.
Yep. Yeah, I would
Okay.
say that we were like
Cool.
trim it
Good.
and then add some flavor, because without a bit of flavor, it's very manual-ish. So
Right. Yeah, and I think the way that you've integrated the graphic design, the themes, and all that have aided to that to allow a level of flavor to go through. So whenever you add bits of flavor with text, it's as if they're more, because you're kind of steeped in the feeling of the world and the game design throughout flipping through the pages, which I think adds so much without having to, really kind of bloat out what really works. And also, we're looking at this from a perspective of this being the playtest document. So if people are going to playtest this game, they likely have a level of D&D or tabletop RPG information, background, and knowledge. And so you've got right to the meat, the heart of the matter on everything, and someone that's experienced can really grasp it. Did you plan on, when this becomes a full book, for that to change somewhat? So you're more, you're offering a little bit more lengthiness and all that kind of stuff, for people that are brand new or newer, that maybe don't have the encyclopedia in their head of years of playing.
yep. Yeah, the plan generally too is we will expand out a bit. I'm pretty I like things to be fairly straightforward and simple. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite versions of D&D is like Moldvay basic. It's like pretty straightforward, and lots of fun over the years with that. So I'm sort of like, there's a lot of things that came out in the playtest where it's like we could clarify this a bit, or maybe I could reorganize this to make it a little easier. But yeah, generally, um, what we really want to expand is, this was really a tester of the sort of core system, and we want to add a lot more toys. We want to add a lot more like little mini game toys. I call them tools and toys. We want to add some of the variant mechanics, like you were talking about, the default way we put in for rolling attributes. We have a little section to put in of like, here are the different ways that you can roll attributes, right? You can do 3d6 straight down, you can do 4d6 drop the lowest, and just sort of take people through those.
Yep.
Because that reminds me of the old DMG. It was like, here's some
Mm-hmm.
variant rules, or here's some rules for this.
Yes.
So what we basically want to do is just expand it to a nice full book. And when I set the target at Rule Cyclopedia and the first edition DMG, that's sort of like, I'm gonna try to dunk on Michael Jordan. So I do not expect, right? But I expect to get further trying to do that than not. So I was sort of like, let's give it a try. I don't think we might not ever be Beethoven, but we might become pretty good pianists.
There you go.
So
I love it.
that's
Yeah,
our
I mean,
big
one of the
thing.
things
We'd
I
love to
wanted
have
to
just something you can look at for years. Yeah. Sorry.
absolutely. And I can see that in there. One of the things you mentioned it already, but as I was reading through, I'm just going to scroll back down here to the character sheet to take everybody back to this point. Because one of the things that I noted kind of reading, people might see it on the character sheet or get the feeling of it. This feels like you had a lot of, can recognize the individual inspirations from some editions of D&D all throughout history, right? Like I looked at it and said, okay, that feels like it was, inspired, drawn from like AD&D. This feels a little more second edition period. This feels a little more later, like, third edition, something like that. And it feels like you kind of have weaved together this pattern, right? And that has the challenge there is that could easily become cacophonous, but it's not. I think you've put together a very nice tapestry that feels harmonious of all these editions. So did you like actively think about that? Did you go back and like at some point say, these were my favorite little elements from this edition or this edition? You mentioned Moldvay, right? Basic and stuff like that. Did you think about those things and say, hey, how can we get some version of this or draw on this for inspiration to bring into the game, pay homage to it?
Yep. Meticulously. I like um there were points where I went through and sort of looked at, how did each different edition handle this? How did it handle that? Like what differences did they make to the game? That's kind of why we decided on the format of like a set core rules that you could, you can always swap in doing attributes a different way, rolling attributes a different way, or determining attributes a different way, and things like that. But then ancillary rules or other rules that could possibly change the game, like if you use hirelings, right? We want to put that in.
Sure.
We have morale rules, which we'll probably expand a bit on, which was a big thing in early editions, but sort of lost, its place in later editions. So, yeah, and I mean, I've ran, I think, every edition, and it always they fascinate me. Like, not even so much. Each has its own feel, but when you play it at the table, it brings out different things in people. They kind of run differently. So there was parts of that where it's like almost like a soundboard. Like, what if you're playing and you want a bit more bass?
Yeah,
Mm.
sure.
So
Absolutely.
it's like,
Yeah.
let's try to give people those tools. Yeah.
No, I mean, just like, so I brought up the kind of core rules page, right? And what's fascinating about this core rules page is that on this 2-page spread, I can literally see elements and homages of every edition of D&D and really creative and interesting new things in here as well that
Right.
you've drawn on and built on. We're all standing on the shoulder of giants anytime we do game design or anything around that kind of feeling, right? Because it's 45, 50 years of people who've given us their best of what they created. But like, for example, your death system, your like damage system, very classic, go to neg 10, die, right? That's sort of like kind of your optional system from second edition, that kind of thing. Whereas your attack roll and your critical hit system, totally different, totally new. Like just this wonderful like break 20. You have the nat 20 in there, of course, but it's then all based off this break 20 system, right? So there's a little bit of like, it really does feel like you're not like just directly picking old pieces. The last thing I'll say here is one of my favorite things I read, John, I don't know if you caught this as well, the initiative system. Okay.
Yes. It's
So
glorious. It took me a moment to wrap my brain around it, and then I'm like, "This is glorious. I love this. I
right.
want to use this in my campaign on Sunday." That's what I want to do.
100%. This was like, I was like, oh my God, this is it. He cracked the code. So like, look, what matters in initiative? I love this. Tell me if this is what went through your head. What matters in initiative generally is, do you go before or after the bad guys? Right? That's what
Yep.
matters.
Yep.
Okay. Whether you act first or whatever is like, oftentimes people have delay and they'll be like, I'll wait for the rogue to go to act and then I'll do this or what, blah, 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 whatever. Right. But it's, do you go before or after the bad guys? So you were like, nah. We'll just boil that down. You make this check. If you succeed, you go before the bad guys. If you fail, you go after the bad guys. And I was like, oh my God, that's, and boom, everybody's set right there. So am I on the right track here of how you got to that mechanic?
Yes. That And it comes from trying different initiative systems, but I do know the individual initiative system I used for a long time, where I would track each monster and character and when they went. But I realized, like, I'm DMing the combat, right? Or I'm DMing the situation, what's going on. So what I really want is for me to say, roll initiative, and the players do their thing. And then I'm over here getting everything ready, you know?
Right.
So,
Right.
yep. And a lot of the game is very DM focused that way. Like the monster builder is like, most monsters you make are going to be dead by the end of the game you made them for, right? So you should have an easy way to make monsters. So yeah, a lot of it's like that, but definitely that initiative one was sort of basically, while I'm prepping stuff, whether it be a map or making sure I got the monster stats out or this or that, the players are rolling initiative, but also talking about their strategies. You know, it's like, well, I can go first, so I can buff you, and then you go after the monster, so you can do that. Um, so that was sort of like, you guys can, let's just cut this down to make it simple. Yeah.
Right. And I also think it adds a level of swinginess and drama to the fight in a good way. So if you have two characters going before the monsters, then the monsters go, and then three characters after. You have this big chunk in the middle where the monsters all go, and big things can happen if all the monsters are going. So the people that go before, their decision on what they do is like they've learned through playing a couple of combats in this game that it's like, we've got to try to mitigate it. We've got to try to make a big impact, or we need to predict that, like, they're all going to go. Typically in a standard D&D game, they're so sprinkled around, it's really hard to make what you'd consider a strategic decision because there's too many variables and they kind of all flutter in your head from one fight to another. And it's like, well, did the skeletons go before you or after you, before him and after him? And it's too much. But here you're just like, it's drama, it's quick, and it moves it fast. And the initiative system is a great example of, it feels like for every aspect of this game, you tried to boil it down to what really matters here. What's the whole intention? What's the whole point? Let's throw all the rules out the window and just, what are we trying to achieve with this being in our game? And then trying to get as pure to that as possible and cutting out all the extra fat in the process. And I really appreciated that. Also, the fact that, like, yeah, but how does initiative work when you're surprised or they surprise you? Well, you get a boon if you're surprising them, and boons in this game, if you know D&D, it's advantage. Bane, if they surprise you, that means you have disadvantage. So you are already throwing it into the system using already known systems that you're going to use those terms, boon and bane, all throughout your rules. So we're not adding like more weight of explaining everything in every individual section, because we can just say boon and bane, and you get it. So I love that.
Yep. Yep. That's what we were going
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
Good. I want to build on that, because so you made interesting choices here throughout to sometimes have things be fairly abstracted. So we have armor on the page, right? So you chose a fairly abstracted route with armor. Like you've got light, medium, heavy, a helm, and a shield. By the way, kudos to you. Thank you for actually caring about the helm. This has always been the thing that drove me completely insane, is that people could wear helms or not. It made no difference. Even though it's your head, it feels like the most important piece of your armor to have on. Whatever. Okay. It's always bothered me. But anyways, so it's a fairly abstracted system, right? They have a flat bonus. Like you kind of give examples of light armor could be these types of things, and heavy armor could be these types of things. But then with weapons, you went a little more specific, right? Like it's not just like a two-handed weapon or a one-handed weapon, which you could have done, right? You could have kept it similarly abstracted. Instead, it's, more what we would expect out of a classic weapons list. I do love, by the way, that even though you just have like pole arms in the actual weapon list, you did in the art still put all of the like Rancier Beck to Corbin, a very nice throwback to the old editions there. So like, how did you balance the decisions between going abstract and going a little more detailed? Like, what was the motivation there?
Just generally, this kind of to me goes back to how people, I think of their characters. Armor typically is sort of like light armor is usually kind of rogue-y, rogue-ish. Medium armor is maybe something like a ranger or an archer, something like that. And the heavier armor is more like your fighters, or you want to feel like a knight. So they had very kind of bucketed, I guess, slots. So I was like, well, the armor can be very simple because people mostly care about light, medium, heavy. And then they kind of care, like, is it leather, or is it a gambeson, or is it this or that? So, but especially for fighters and rogues, obviously, weapons, the specific weapons really tell you the personality, right?
Yeah.
So like the Grey Mauser had, say, a rapier and a dirk, right? Or something like, or do you have like a big two-handed sword or this or that? So I felt like the weapon is one place where you can really get your, like if you use a scythe, it could have the same stats nearly as another weapon, but definitely feels different.
It's making a statement. If you bring a scythe to a fight, you're making a statement about your character. Yes,
right.
for
Yeah,
sure.
You just walk into the pub with that thing, you're making a statement.
Yes. That's it.
100%.
I think that's right on. Like there's so much satisfaction in decision making and getting a new shiny, Ransuer or something like that. You're just like, whoa, like there's a level of satisfaction and excitement and character definition around what you wield in battle. And that can be spells, and that can be a bow, that can be a vast number of arms. So I think that's such a great way of showing the breadth of uniqueness. And by and large, there's something different about this long list of weapons that there's no two that are basically identical. They all have something that's different, and it really makes them a choice in and of itself, which I think is great.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's the way we always felt too. Like what's my little edge? Like, is it cool to use a dagger? Well, I can buy a bunch of them cheap, and they have this little edge to them. Like I can throw them or stab you with them, and they have a little bonus. So, but it should be something that we were like, these should all give your character a little bit of personality. If somebody's using that big bulg hammer or club, then you're like, okay, that tells me a bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, 100%.
And I want to before we jump away from weapons, there's one more very important change that you've added to this game in how you define weapons. And you have two different groups. You have martial weapons and you have rogue weapons. Can you explain what makes them different and why you did it that way?
To me, it was over the various editions, there were always these. It was this little jumbly mess. Like, do I add my strength to attack? Do I add my strength to damage? Can I add my strength to an attack with a bow? Or can I not add my strength to an attack with a rapier?
Right.
So, and over the various editions, they've all tried these different ways and combos, and I was like, I just want this to kind of make sense, but be easy to grok, right? It's easy to understand. So basically, I was like, well, your main thing is whether you're sort of more rogue or thiefy, or whether you're more like an actual fighter soldier type person. So I took the weapons and did the split of if it deals a D8 damage or higher, that's like a martial weapon, like a soldier, a mercenary, or a real in the field fighter, on the battlefield fighter would use. But if the weapon and you use strength for that, and if it's a D6 or lower damage, that's like a lighter rogue weapon that you use dex for. And then you combine that with our break 20 rule. Strength and dex gives you a bonus to attack, but not damage. But the break 20 rule will give you extra damage when you roll high enough. So it was all kind of a, can I squeeze this all into a simple system?
Yeah. So the break 20 rule is if you rolled after your all your modifiers, you rolled higher than a 20. So let's say you rolled a 17 and you're plus 5, that's a 22. The break 20 means that any number above 20, you do that extra number in damage. So if you rolled a dirty 22, that means you get an extra plus 2 to the damage roll. You roll a nat 20, it's a double break, and you still add your pluses on there, and then you do double that damage. So there's a way that you're adding damage modifiers, but you're not doing it on the regular. And I swear to God, doesn't matter how many grown-ass adults play D&D, they cannot add a D6 plus a static number to save their life on the regular. And I am just so grateful. Just look at the number and say it out loud. Let's just get on with the day.
Well, by far the playtesters, that is one of the things that stuck out. They really liked that. It's like my total to hit was like a 23, and I landed that, and it feels like
Right.
So people really liked that in particular. So
yeah. And the weapons, I promise we'll get off this in a second, but in the weapons, they're a great example of like trickle down, like purposeful trickle down that happens here, that you've tweaked older editions to feel streamlined and to feel like with purpose. For example, in older editions, my giant 20 strength paladin could wield a dagger and he'd use his strength to hit with it. That doesn't make any sense. That's not how a dagger is used. It's not a force weapon. It's about finding an opening and being nimble and finding that quickly and slicing quickly. It's not about brute force. Here, the dagger is a dagger. To be proficient with a dagger and to be able to use a dagger correctly, it's not the same as using a giant greatsword, and therefore you shouldn't swing it in the same manner. I always thought it funny to picture a paladin swinging a greatsword or a dagger in the exact same motion. You're like, that's not supposed to work that way. And in your rules, just clarify it.
Yeah, that's sort of how we saw it too. Like, a lion doesn't need a fork, right?
Right. Yeah, that's good reference. Yes,
he's not eating noodles.
Who doesn't love backstabbing somebody with a great sword? As a rogue, I'm just saying that does make a statement.
Yeah.
So, no, look, that brings us that's a perfect segue, John, and like, because I want to talk a little about classes. Because you chose a very interesting methodology here, I think, for the classes. So I went up to the character cauldron pages here on the screen. And as everybody will see, like, there's basically 20 classes in this game, right? As it sits in the playtest version. Now, 4 of them are casters. We've got a lot, but we have a lot of different variants of fighters and rogues, but they're still ultimately classed into these sort of typals, which I love. I love classic archetype typals as like a gathering place for classes. The real interesting thing was, and I want to just kind of hear you, I'd love to just hear you opine on classes and how you think about them. We just did a show recently on multi-classing, right? And my problem with a lot of multi-classing systems is they always felt like either they were way too front-loaded or you had to jump too many hoops, when really all I'm trying to do is just like make the character I want to make, right? And what happens during the game, I want to be able to respond to that. And suddenly, like, there's a reason. You mentioned Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, but like, Conan himself, like as I talked about in the previous show, like he felt like he was a rogue part of his life, a fighter part of his life, like all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your system there's a lot of variance. You have all these different classes, but they're pretty simple. Like here's the breakdowns everybody can see. And every time you level, you just pick what you want to level in. Like you just do it. Like whatever makes sense between you and your character and the GM. So like you were a soldier, great. Your soldier time ends. You spend some more time working with a bow, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go into some Deadeye. I need some more ranged kind of stuff. I've been working with a bow more, that kind of thing. Boom. Okay, done. So how did you think about classes? What were you trying to achieve? Because I think it's a really versatile system.
This went through a ton of iterations. But in the end, we realized, going back to that pulp stuff, the classic was Conan. So Conan was like, what do they say, like a king and a reaver and a thief and a pirate, right? So he had, and I was like, okay, well, that's kind of what we want. Like these archetypes are things that kind of pulp fantasy characters build up. It's like that guy is kind of a blackguard and a dodger, like a blackguard and a prowler, right? So we wanted those because we thought that really gives your character a good feel, but we have enough so that there's a lot of combos that you can kind of mix and match. And you were talking about Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. Like the Grey Mouser obviously was sort of a thief, but he was also, good with a rapier or whatever. And he also dabbled a little bit in magic, and
Right. Right.
Fafhrd was basically a big bruiser, but his mother was also like a winter witch or whatever, so he might have known a cantrip or two from her. So we were kind of like, we want that. Like that's the way the stories are. That's the way we always wanted it to be. So
Mm,
we wanted a way to kind of put that in there in a very simple way.
all right.
But
Nice.
it took us
It
about
fe-
18 iterations. It was
yeah.
painful.
I mean, it looks very it looks, and I think that as anyone that reads through these all your rules, and like Vince said, it's literally a 10-page PDF, where there's double pages on each side. Like that, every decision on here, it looks effortless, but I can tell that so much went into this. And I'm reading through these, and I'm like, you know what I see when I read these? I see being able to tell my character's story and their arc and have it mirror how they choose to like develop in different classes. And so it's like you're not restraining your players in the class that they choose from level 1, but you're actually encouraging them to have the character play out at the table based on the story that's being told at the table. Is that a part of it? The storytelling in your rule decision and your rule designing?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, we're actually we want we want actually this part to kind of go up to level 10 where you mix and match. And we're working on another part now that's kind of beyond 10th level. So you can add in
Ooh.
other things as you go beyond 10th level. But we really
Okay.
love the idea that, you meet the ancient sword master and he teaches you some special thing, right? Or maybe a few levels of a special thing, or do you actually spend part of your career slowly becoming a lich, right? Like, or
Mhm.
so
Well, I'm back on
we
board
like
all of a sudden. Hello. Yes. What now? Hello. Yeah.
but we wanted stuff like that. It's stories. We wanted to flip it a bit and kind of be like, instead of it like I'm a fighter and someday I'll be a 10th level fighter, more of I started out as a simple fighter, and then I
Right?
then I began to dabble in magic because of this and blah blah blah. So we just wanted a little more that of those stories to be, yeah, ways to tell those stories.
Nice. So I want to dig in a little bit here because I'm gonna pick a minor bone. All right, we can't. I gotta have some
It's
pushback here
it's a play
somewhere, right?
test. We're ready for it to be torn apart. To tell you the truth.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'll start with the thing I think that is correct. It is correct that there is so few casting classes. This is correct. Okay, the absolute proliferation of like different types of things that just might as well all be mages is right. It is also correct that the mage has a D4 hit dice, by the way. That is
Yes.
absolutely, that is correct. Okay. So I am fully on board with these choices. So like I felt like you got the 4 solid archetypes down here for the casters. You don't need 50 other versions of this thing. I feel like we've just gone too far. Whereas again, with fighters and rogues, I like the proliferation there because it does feel like a thing that has lots of nuance to it and different spaces for it. But here's my one issue. Okay. And it has to do with the spells themselves. I read through the spells. I'm an old school wizard. Been playing wizards. My first character was a wizard. Been playing wizards forever. One of my favorite things about wizards in general is just like literally feeling like a wizard. I love digging for spells, like finding new and unusual spells and stuff like that. I like the casting system with the ranks and all of that. That's really nice. Where like your level is directly contributing. So there's some incentive to keep going in the class. But if you minor, you can do your cantrips and stuff like that. That's all cool. But how do you think about the fact that like is spells something that you want to expand more of in the future, like have larger sets of it? Because like I got down here and I read like the mage spells and I was like, oh, it's just kind of like the evoker elementalist stuff. Okay. Okay. That's fine. Like You get what I mean? Like, I was like, oh, I was hoping there'd be like more fun, different stuff I could do. Like, part of playing a wizard is always like feeling like, oh, if I find a new tome, I can find new and weird things to do. Right. So, how do you think about that and try to square that circle going?
We have twice as many spells as we showed here.
Okay. Okay.
And honestly, I would like to go through and give them a tightening. So with this, with the playtest, I was kind of like, we should at least make sure we give people kind of what they're looking for. So I think if we did a playtest that didn't have a fireball,
Right.
or this or that, then people want to see that. So, but it was also like we want to limit the amount because we don't just want it too sprawling. You know what I mean? In the final book, probably each caster will have like a 2-page spread or something and some really cool art. If I can find a cool artist, maybe I can find a cool artist. Or if I can get my artist to draw this guy.
Right.
But yeah, I'm kind of like that. But that to me is cool feedback because I also have a lot of spells that are, let's like weirder or different stuff that we've come up with.
Ooh, yeah. See, that's what I'm into. I love a weird spell that just like suddenly has a new and unusual use. You're like,
Mhm.
oh, but what if I did this clever thing with it, right? That was always my favorite part of playing a mage.
Yeah. Well, we'll put more of those in. I'll put them in just for you. You
That's
can
what I
send
want
me
to
a
hear.
wish
All right,
list.
I'm back on board. Well, we've solved my only problem. Okay, great. Hey, this is a win.
No, there was
Yeah,
one my
just
friend made up, and he was like, "What if you want to? What if your mage wants to like turn into a little object, like a book or a dagger, and then just
Yes.
get shoved in somebody's backpack, and then later on turn back to yourself and like dig around their, you know, dig around their secret laboratory, and then turn back into a book." And so there were little ones like that, and I was like, "That's really cool," and we'll just put that in. So yeah, there's definitely a whole bunch more we can do there. But I would give you this offer. Um, you can send me any crazy spell you can think of, and I will attempt to make it for you.
Awesome. You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting because there may be so a lot of this is feels very toolkitty, right? There's a couple other things as we're talking through here. I do want to make sure we touch on because I think they're just so neat, and I want to make sure people understand it. And that's let me jump down to the creature cauldron, right? So the creature cauldron is so people understand like you have monsters in the sample stat blocks, but really, what you're offering is not a monster manual. You know, here's a book of all the different monsters. What you're offering is a toolkit that just saying, like, look, the monsters are going to be here, then the PC smash them and then they die, like you mentioned earlier, right? So I'm going to give you a very simple set of rules that you can just be like, here, name of monster, size, kind of how big they are, hit dice, and that tells you how much. And these various things will tell you basically how challenging they are for, what level are your players. And then here's the special abilities you can use, that's a monster, right? And it just you have this threat mechanic in there, which just lets you like kind of custom build out your monster, but it's very simple. I love the monster system, very versatile. I'd love to see the same sort of thing, honestly, for like the spells, right? Where you had a similar sort of interference mechanic like you have with threat here that you could spend to do different things with your spells. I think that would be neat because so much of what you built here is very toolkitty, and I love that it puts the power in the hands of the GM and the players. I think the magic is another potential area for that. So
That's an interesting thought. It's from all the stuff we've been working with, it's not that different from the other, you know, which we've done. That's exactly what I was talking about. Of like, you make something and then you're like, that's kind of cool, but you tear it apart and then put it back together a little more
Mhm.
streamlined or flexible, and then tear it apart again. But that's a really interesting thought. For this monster builder stuff, we will have like basically this is sort of like I dreamed up a monster, and my friends are going to be here in like an hour. Can I just can I make up a monster? And so that's really what this is for. Our gazetteer section will have more kind of like the ones on the right where we have like general stats and stuff listed out. We'll also have sort of big, I guess, sort of boss monsters. So if we have the equivalent to like Demogorgon or something, he gets a 2-page spread with his own stat block and all this stuff.
So the big bosses get the extra attention, the love,
Yeah,
because those are what matter,
that's
right? Yeah,
those are what
they're
matter, yeah.
culmination monsters. Yeah,
Yep,
Yeah,
fodder
I
and
love that.
muscles. Yep.
Yeah,
But that
I love
exactly.
that's
that.
Yep.
your idea for spell, which sounds sort of like can I kind of make my own spells? I think we could do that. That might be fun.
Hey, there you go. All right,
Yeah.
I'm helping. Uh,
You'll
Yeah,
get a
and
designer credit now.
excellent.
don't dangle that in front of him. You're gonna he'll get drunk with power. uh, my little quick thing on the that I really think that really stands out about the creature cauldron is what really matters. Again, going back to what the stuff that I brought up earlier was that you took the basic idea and say what matters. What really matters is just one interesting, unique thing that this monster does that really shows how they'll play out at the table unique and will feel like a fun, unique experience instead of it just being generic monster level 1, generic monster level 2. And that
Bag
allows
of hit points with an attack bonus.
yes, exactly. And they're all the same. But because you have the stat blocks broken down by level, I can grab stuff off the fly. I could run a monster in 20 seconds if they, run across something or they attack something I did not think they were going to attack. And boom, I can do that. And I can grab your special trait block and just scroll through that and be like, okay, I get it. This one's got leap. Okay. And then it's only the only important thing I need to know to make them feel unique at the table. Is that special trait block something that you're going to continue just like the spell list to flesh out more? Do you feel like it's a kind of thing that it shouldn't be too massive because then it kind of undermines the whole, point of keeping things streamlined, or what's your thoughts on that?
We have 2 to 3 times more traits than what I put in here.
I love
and
that.
to me as a DM, I'm kind of like, you want all those things. You want all those little corner cases, like, oh, I made this little creature. Do they have a trait that lets me be turned into slime, or, like? So we're gonna add for those. We're gonna add just as many as we can, so that you can model. The big thing with that we wanted was to have it be easy. So since we
Yeah.
either have, like it says in the rules, they're either sort of net negative, I called it, where it's like you get a +1 to this, but you get a -1 to that. So therefore cost is 0. Or you get like, they use threat die. So threat die is just default with the stat block, so cost is 0. So basically you just pick a stat block, tweak it if you like, and then grab these however you like. Because I was like, I don't want to, get out the calculator and use a point system when I'm making monsters.
Yeah.
Sometimes they only have an hour.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, we're gonna totally expand this, and now it's got my head thinking of what you said about the because these are all basically very similar, or even exactly the same as spell effects.
Right,
So
exactly. That was what occurred to me. The other thing that I like here, by the by, and I'm sure you clock this too, John, is that this lets you manipulate or modify your monsters on the fly really easily, right? So when you have the existing stat blocks, here's your vampire. It does this. It's a vampire. But it's a vampire who lives on the elemental plane of fire. Just like, okay, this is like a fireborn vampire. You can just boom, like you just drop that in, and suddenly they've got this extra functionality. So like customizing the monsters to make them a more unique experience becomes easy, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I liked that quite a bit.
Right. Yep. Yeah. You have a couple of knobs, because if we have 20 knobs to turn, it's like you might as well be 0 if you have 20, because I'm not going to bother that. But you have 2 here to work with, right? It's that simple chart. Okay, I can adjust this one being the boss of the orcs. He's going to be 1 level higher, and then maybe he's he's got he's mom was a demon, so now he's winged. Okay, boom. I got 2 little knobs I can tweak, and I can bring so much character to the game, and I love that. Vince, do you want to talk about widgets? I feel like we need to
I
talk
do.
about widgets.
This is absolutely where I wanted to end. Yes, Richard, I just want to let you go on widgets for a little while because it's obviously the next thing here. And let me tell you why I love this section, but I really do want to know your thoughts on kind of where this is. So, so I have always been a fan of subsystems. Okay. And by subsystems, I mean fun things that your characters can like get into, or systems that just work slightly differently to the rest of the game. But they're their own little self-contained things that if you like them, if you're into it, you pick them up and you play with them. And if you don't, it's cool. You can leave the little subsystem to the side here, right? And so like yours is, you've got like, you know, in this base playtest, you've got like inebriation and field alchemy, which is super cool, right? We got a little plainer explanation here, but like the alchemy and the inebriation stuff, I love this. Right. So what were you going for with these? Are you similarly a fan of these little modular subsystems that you can just kind of pick up and use or not? Like how did you think about this stuff?
Yeah, there were two things to them, and that I think is a lot of inspiration from the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, the original first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. When I would flip through that, I would find all of these weird little things like, oh, there's this, here's the whole write-ups on diseases you can get, or here's the saving throws for items. Just all these different things, you know? So, but we had two goals for this, and one was, you know, one of the first things we made when we were in high school was we need drinking rules because our characters are going to get drunk, right? And they're going to want to get an ogre drunk, right? So,
Yeah.
and this is what
Yep.
you think about. So I was like, well, that'll be our first. But the way I described it to my friend Matt was, it was like, don't let them get, like, we don't want them to get too crazy, too complex, because even me as a DM, I want to like let's say there's a break in the game and we ordered pizza. I can read most of these while I'm eating a slice of pizza and just go, got it, and then start running it. So that's really what we were trying to go for was, and also it gives you things outside of combat to do, which we think adds
Yeah.
some
Right.
fun. Yep.
It fills out the world, right? It makes it feel
Right.
like a more holistic thing than just, not that like combat and dungeon exploration, all those things aren't valuable. They are. I don't want to minimize them. It's a big part of obviously the game. But
Yeah.
to make the world feel whole, having these kinds of systems really matters because it makes the world feel bigger, right?
Yes.
You
Right.
can go discover these new. It's also another thing of discovery for the players to be like, oh, cool. This we can do this. This is how we do this, right? So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, like
I
Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser or Conan, they get drunk.
Yes.
And then, you know, Aragorn's like Kingsfoil, you know, like I want to find like field alchemy, right? So
yeah.
yeah, we want, it's sort of like how do we get these stories in there, but not make it so complicated that it actually is against you using it, you know?
I think you've Richard, you've coined a phrase that needs to be brought into all D&D lexicon, and that is the slice rule. Can you determine and be able to run it with the consumption of one slice of pizza? If not, it needs to be rewritten.
Yes.
One of my favorite comic authors of all time, he talked about how like amongst comic authors there was a rule that you had to write your book so that people could read it when they were on the toilet. Okay, like basically the editors would come back and be like, this is too long or it's too wordy, right? So they kind of timed the reading of the comic to like taking a number two. And
Yeah.
that author always said, I wrote my books short enough so that you could read it while you're taking a number one. And I always thought that was just like the funniest thing, how he got to like having a really short thing. But I like this. This is the cleaner version, the slice of pizza roll. Yes, that's good.
It may have started with the other.
Yeah. Well,
Hopefully either or.
either or.
That's true. Yeah, one does lead directly to the other. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're
That's
not wrong.
true.
This is how we do
Yeah.
it. We're very modular.
Yeah.
And are widgets something you're going to want to? I think you mentioned that earlier. That it's something that you want to flesh out. You want to continue to add more of these fun tools and toys. You described them as toys, and I think that's a great description. Are you planning on adding more of these to the game as well?
Yeah, like I have a list of probably 30 or 40 in total.
All right.
So
I
we're
love
just kind of
this.
going through. So what makes the cut, like it'll depend on, you know, does it get too complex or is that? But I made one the other day. I made a really simple one the other day for my friend's daughter. So he was like, she's really young and she likes to do this. So I was like, I'll make her a little game. So I was like, oh, we might put that one in. No, but we want to have a good little section of this. but it's really paring it down. Like, how often do you think people might get a kick out of running this? How simple can you make it? And how much flavor can you deliver with it? You know, I put in way too much time making logos for every piece of every type of booze.
Yeah, I love those though. It's so
Yeah,
much.
but I like that stuff. I like when it has a touch. You know, like
Yeah, it
yeah.
does. Um, Vince, we are going to finish up this episode by asking. I have some administrative things, so the lovely listeners and watchers can maybe get their hands on this game. But did you have any final questions or anything that burning that you needed to ask of Richard first?
So, I mean, goodness sakes, I could take this on for another hour for sure, but just with like every nuanced question that zero people in the audience would find interesting, but I would love to discuss. Why did you choose this number here, right? Like those kinds of things. But no, I think what I want to do is just say, all in all, reading this was really uh just really nice. It felt like it was extremely well thought out. And I know it sounded like you mentioned it a couple times in here. There does feel like also not just the influence there, but also some of the old school Renaissance, some OSR influence here as well. I just kind of wanted to ask you at the end, like, what is there anything we missed, or like that you drew on that we didn't talk about, or anything like that, or any kind of little things you thought were really cool that we didn't hit on? Just kind of give you a few minutes to opine there on anything we might have missed, because all in all, I felt like I was reading something that valued and loved the history of D&D, but also like was building on it in a new way, looked at the old school Renaissance and drew some from that as well. And this is all stuff that I'm like deep into. My normal weekly game is a second edition game. So like I'm very much living in that world. So yeah, just I thought I'd let you go. Anything we missed? Anything else you wanted to touch on?
I would say I think generally, like I said, this document had a couple of purposes, and the main purpose was sort of those core mechanics. Do they work for people? Because if you've designed game stuff, so you know that it can destroy itself when you give it to people sometimes, and just be like,
Yes, it will all fall apart sometimes spectacularly, even. Yes.
yes. So that really was the main purpose. But there's also a lot of things in here, like a bit of the taste of the world and those mini games and things like that. Spells will have more spells. We'll have more traits for monsters. So I would say, really, you guys did a great job of kind of running through it. I'm glad you liked it. Um, and
Right.
and even some suggestions is really helpful right now too. But no, in general, I think that's all I would like to tell people is like this is actually just a taste of like what we're doing. We have a lot more to put in, um, and we're working on the V2 right now to give some updates. So I would say for both of you too, if you have any thoughts or ideas and you got a minute to write them out, like just drop me an email because right now is when I'm sort of, you know, working up the V2, doing some corrections, trying to find all my spelling errors and
Right.
typos.
Deep in the sauce, as it were. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll run my regular group through a game, and then I'll get you my feedback. Maybe we'll do a level 5.
Same plan over
So
here. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I'm
I would
excited.
really appreciate that.
Yeah. Which leads me to kind of for us to land this plane. Uh, two main questions that I wanted to finish up with, Richard. Number one, is this playtest available? If anyone that's watching or listening wanted to try it out themselves, is this somewhere they can go online to download the PDF themselves?
Yeah, I've been getting people just to drop me a private message or whatever, either on Instagram or Twitter. My Instagram should be just Richard Whitters. I think my Twitter is Witters Richard.
Got
But
it.
I should be pretty easy to find. My icon is usually a little blue Zvart who's balding, similar to me. So um, that was my other 5th edition. I designed the Zvarts too, so or
There you go.
redesigned the Zvarts.
All right.
But
All
yeah, if
right.
anybody wants it, at this point, just drop me a message. I'll send you out a PDF. And like I said, in the next about the next week, I would say, and within the next week or so, we're going to try to put out the V2. So if people want, it might be a good time to catch the next one. We'll put a few extra treats in that.
Are you going to have, or do you have, or are you planning on having a home on a website for all this? So maybe future versions that you don't get inundated, because I have a feeling you're about to get inundated after this episode of people wanting this. And please do it, Gazeboids. Just bother the man to no end. So he puts it all on a website. Do you have plans for that? Is that something that as you get closer and you're going to get hounded more and more for people hungry for your game, that you're going to have the playtesting stuff available?
Yes. I have my blog, which is equivalent to having a MySpace. I realize. So
Who's in your top 8? Yeah, exactly.
I
Right
can't
on.
keep up with your technology, you kids. Yeah, but no, we'll have a website. What we're working on right now actually is a Discord.
Oh, wonderful.
We're setting up a Discord server. I'm really looking forward to. I love recording, like doing little voice recording clips too, and running games for people. So I'm looking forward to that because I want to run some games for folks.
That's amazing. Okay, I love that. So I'll join your Discord and pester you there too.
Yeah, 100% in. Yeah, for sure.
The final thing, I know that this, you probably don't have a final answer for this, or a answer in stone, but people are going to yell at us if we didn't ask you the question. Do you have a estimated timeline for the game to be completed?
Yes, and I would kind of put that in. Like if you look what we have there, I would say that's maybe a quarter or so of the book that we want to do. We have a bunch of other content that really needs, we're still looking at too, like solidifying the layout and stuff like that. I would say end of next year at the latest, and I'm guessing we'd like to get it done sooner than that, I think. Because we'd like to have a Kickstarter like early, like within the first, quarter of next year.
Exciting.
And then take a bit to finish the book. But we want most of the book, or at least half the book done and solid, and then basically let's do more mini games and fill out content.
Yeah, fill out that ephemera.
Yeah. That's key too. Is like you got to hold some of the mini games under the chest so you can have those as unlock rewards in the Kickstarter. It's just gonna get the feeding frenzy going. It's like, oh man, we get the square dancing mini game unlocked if we hit $250,000. Everyone, sign up.
I'm really bad at that because, like you were saying with the playtest, it's like, here's the playtest. Oh, give them everything. Give them as much as I can, right? So I kind of err on that side. It's like, if you like a few things in this, you'll probably like the whole thing, and if you'll say, hey, that's totally worth it.
Yeah, I think you'll get a good feel even just reading through. So everyone, bother Richard and get your hands on this play test, and you'll get a good feeling just by reading through this once. And if you're anything like Vince and I, we're just immediately like, okay, I want to play this right now. So do that. And then final thing, Richard, once your Kickstarter is live and you're not completely overwhelmed, we'd love to have you back on again so we can talk about the path from today until your product, and share any more updates or any exciting things that we talked about. So that would be great.
That sounds awesome. I would love that.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Richard, for your time today. This was so much fun. Now I'm even more pumped to play this game. Ruttigers. Find Richard and check out his amazing artwork as well. Obviously, the guy is truly a Renaissance man here. Find him on Instagram, find him on Twitter, pester the man, and let him know that you appreciate him and that you want to get your hands on his game. We'll be back next week with another new episode. Say bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.